Chapter 36 Letter Writing. Every educated person should know how to write a clear and readable letter. Everyone has sometimes to write business letters of some sort and may have to face the problem of writing an important letter that will vitally affect his interest in life. The art of letter writing is, therefore, no mere ornamental accomplishment but something that every educated person must acquire for practical reasons. The form of letters. Letters are message, and certain letter forms have been established by experience and custom as the most useful forms, learned and used by every letter writer. For neglect of them is a sign of ignorance and carelessness. There are several different kinds of letters, such as friendly letter, business letters, etc., each of which has its own particular form. But there are certain matters of form which apply to all, and these may be explained by first. In all kinds of letters, there are 6 points of form to be attended to, namely: first, the heading consists of the writer's address and the date. Second, the courteous greeting or salutation. Third, the communication or message in the body of the letter. Fourth, the subscription or courteous leave taking or conclusion. The signature, the subscription on the envelope. First one, the heading. This informs the reader where you wrote the letter and when. The where, which should be the writer's full postal address, gives the address to which the reader may reply, and the when is for reference as it gives him the date on which you wrote. The position of the heading is the top right hand corner of the first page, the address above and the date just below it. The heading and the date may alternatively go on the left. 24. Purvi, Merge, New Delhi 110057, 10 October 2001. The date may be written in any of the following ways: 4th June 2001, 4th June 2001, June 4, 2001. Second, salutation or greeting. The form of greeting will depend upon the relation in which you stand to the person to whom you are writing. To members of your family, for example, it will be dear father, my dear mother, dear uncle, dear Hari, etc. To friends, it will be dear Sri Desai or dear Desai or dear Ramchandra, etc. As people, it will be dear sir, dear sirs, etc. Note, the use of the term dear is purely formal and is a mere polite expression, not necessarily implying any special affection. Third, the communication or body of the letter. This is, of course, the letter itself, and the style in which it is written will depend upon the kind of letter you wish to write. The style of a letter to an intimate friend will be very different from that of a purely business letter or an official communication, but a few hints that apply to all letters are given below. A. Divide your letter, unless it is very short, into paragraphs to mark changes of subject matter, etc. B. Use simple and direct language and short sentences. Do not try to be eloquent and drag in long words just because they are long words. Be clear about what you want to say and say it as directly as possible. C. Try to be complete. It is a sign of solvency. It is a sign of slovenly thinking when you have to add postscripts at the end of a letter Think out what you want to say before you begin to write and put down your points in some logical order. D. Write neatly. Remember that your correspondent has to read what you write and do not give him unnecessary trouble with bad penmanship and slovenly writing. E. Mind your punctuation and put in commas and semicolons and full stops in their proper places. Incorrect punctuation may alter the whole meaning of a sentence. Fourth, the subscription leave taking. The letter must not end abruptly, simply with the writer's name. This would look rude, so certain forms of polite leave taking are prescribed, such as yours sincerely, your sincere friend, yours faithfully, etc. Different leave taking forms are used in different kinds of letters, are these will be given under their proper heads. The subscription or leave taking phrase must be written below the last words of the letter and to the right side of the page. This is the traditional method. Note that today there is a growing tendency to place the subscription on the left side. Note the first word of the subscription must begin with a capital letter. Example, sincerely yours. The signature or name of the writer. This must come below the subscription. Thus, yours sincerely, K.R. Deshpande. In letters to strangers, the signature should be clearly written so that the reader may know whom address in reply. A woman should prefix to the name Miss or Mr. in the brackets. Miss can be used by woman who does not wish to be called Miss or Mr. Your faithfully, Mrs. Desai. Sixth, the address on the envelope or postcard. The address on the envelope or postcard should be written clearly like this. Airmail. In left side, S. Chanda and Company Limited, 7361 Ramnagar, New Delhi, 110055, India. To sum up, in writing a letter, first write your address and under it the date in the top right hand corner of the first page. You may alternatively write them on the left. Then write the salutations, Dear Sri Desai, lower down at the left side of the page, beginning with a capital and putting a comma after it. Next, begin your letter with a capital letter on the next lower line to the right of the salutation. At the end of the letter, write the subscription or words of leave taking. Yours sincerely at right left side of the page with your signature below it. For example, on right side 6 North Usman Road, Chennai 600017, 4th October 2001. Left side, Dear Sir, Center, I will be much obliged if you send me as soon as possible the books which I ordered a week ago. Yours faithfully. On left side, Abdul Ghani. Classification of letters. Letters may be classified according to their different purposes. Thus, first one, social letters, including friendly letters and notes of inventions. Second one, business letters, including letters of applications, letters to government officers, and letters to newspapers. These have different characteristics of which must be considered. First, social letters, friendly letters. Letters to relations and intimate friends should be written in an easy conversational style. They are really of the nature of friendly chat, and being as a rule unpremeditated and spontaneous compositions. They are informal and free and easy and as compared to with easy essays. Just as an friendly talk, so in friendly letters we can touch on many subjects and in any order we like, and we can see colloquial expressions which would in formal essays be quite out of place. But this does not mean that we can be careless and slovenly in dashing off our letters, for it is insulting to ask a friend to decipher a badly written, ill composed, and confused scrawl. So we must take some care and preserve some order in expressing our thoughts. Above all, it must be remembered that however free and easy may be our style, we are just as much bound by the rules of spelling, punctuation, grammar, and idiom in writing a letter as we are in writing the most formal essays. Such ungrammatical expressions as an advice, those sort of things, and he met my brother and I are no more permissible in a friendly letter than in a literacy article. Mistakes in spelling, punctuation, and grammar at once stamp a letter writer as undereducated. Forms of address in friendly letters to relations and intimate friends. The proper form of address is the name of the person to whom you are writing, prefixed by such qualifying terms as dear, my dear, dearest, etc. For example, dear father or mother, dear brother, dearest sister, dear Edward, my dear Abdul, etc. But if you are writing to an ordinary friend who is much older than you are or of superior rank, it is respectful to use a prefix like Mr., Mrs., Shri, etc. Example, dear Mr. Krishna Rao. Students writing friendly letters to their teachers or professors should always address them thus. The forms of subscription are varied. The following can be used in letters to relatives or near friends. Your affectionately, your affectionate son or brother or friend, yours very sincerely. Or you can use some such forms of as this: with love and best wishes from your affectionate friend Ahmad Hassan. In concluding letters to friends or acquaintances whom you address as Shri or Mr. My dear Shri Durga Prasad, you should use the word sincerely or very sincerely in the subscription, and this may be proceeded by with kind regards thus. With kind regards, yours sincerely, Chaman Lal. Note: sincerely should not be used in letters beginning with the formal dear sir, after which the proper word of subscription is faithfully or truly. Notes of invasions. A formal invasion is generally written in the third person and should contain no heading, no salutation, and no complimentary clause. The writer's name should appear in the body of the letter. The address of the writer and the date should be written to the left below the communication. The reply to such a note should also be in the third person and should repeat the date and time mentioned in the invention. Informal notes of invention. Acceptance and refusal are like ordinary friendly letters. Through using more formal language, they are addressed to the recipient by name, and the formal clause is usually any of the following: sincerely yours sincerely, yours very sincerely, yours affectionately, to relations or intimate friends. Second, business letters. Business letters should be terse, clear, and to the point. Businessmen are busy men and have no time to read long, rambling, and confused letters. Business letters are naturally much more formal in style than friendly letters. Certain forms of polite expression are used, such as "I shall be much obliged if you will send me." Second, "Please dispatch at your earliest convenience," etc. At the same time, certain phrases of business jargon should be avoided. They are commonly used but are not good English, and the meaning can be conveyed as clear in simple, everyday language. Examples of such expressions are yours of even date to hand, dispatch same at once. Avoid so far as possible abbreviations like for advertisement, exam for examination, etc. And the omission of I or we. Example, have received instead of we have received. In business letters ordering goods, care should be taken to give clear and exact description of the articles. In business letters ordering goods, care should be taken to give clear and exact wanted. An itemized list of the goods wanted should be supplied with the quality and quantity required. Directions for forwarding should be given by rail, post, etc., and the manner in which payment will be made indicated by money order, VPP, check, or by debiting to the writer's account. Everything should be clear and precise. Form. The form of business letters is the same as already described, with one addition: the address, the name of the firm or businessman to whom the letter is addressed, which should be written on the first page, lower down than the heading, and to the left of the page. It may be placed at the end of the letter, lower than the signature, and at the left side of the page, but the visual position is at the beginning. Mode of addresses. The modes of address vary. First, to a tradesman, Shri B.V. Rao, bookseller, 12 Ring Road, Bangalore. Begin, dear sir, and conclude your faithfully. Second, to a firm, Messrs. K.R. Das, CO, T. Merchants, 24 Ring Road, Kolkata. Begin, dear sirs, and conclude with yours faithfully. Note: if the firm has an impersonal title, Messrs should not be prefixed. For example, Eurasia Publishing House, Vijaya Trading Co. Vijay Trading Co. Replies. In replying to a business letter, always quote the numbers of reference if there is one, and the date of the letter you are answering. For example, in reply to your letter number 502 divided by 502/P dated July 26, 20, so on, I would like to say, etc. Application. A letter applying for employment should contain a. A short introduction stating whether the writer is answering an advertisement or is applying on his own responsibility. B. A statement of his age, education, and experience. C. A conclusion giving references or an expression of the applicant's earnestness of purpose. Letters of application should be in the form of business letters. Letters to newspapers. These should always be addressed to the editor and they usually end with yours faithfully. The form of salutation is Sir or Dear Sir. If the writer gives his address for publication, it is often placed below the letter and to the left of the signature. If the writer does not wish his name to be published, he can sign his letter with a non-D plum, such as interested, anxious, one who knows, etc. But in any case, he must give his name and address in a covering letter to the editor, for no respectable newspaper will publish anonymous letters. Chapter 37 Comprehension. The comprehension exercise consists of a passage upon which questions are set to test the student's ability to understand the content of the given text and to infer information meanings from it. Here are a few hints. First, read the passage firmly quickly to get the general idea. Read again a little slowly so as to know the details. Study the questions thoroughly. Turn to the relevant portions of the passage. Read them again and then rewrite them in your own words, neatly and precisely. Use complete sentences. If you are asked to give the meaning of any word or phrases, you should express the idea as clearly as possible in your own words. Certain words require the kind of definition that is given in a dictionary. Take care to frame the definition in conformity with the part of speech. Specimen. Read the passage below and then answer the questions which follow it. It has been part of Nelson's prayer that the British fleet might be distinguished by humanity in the victory which he expected. Setting an example himself, he twice gave orders to cease firing upon the redoubtable, supposing that she had struck, because her great guns were silent. For as she carried no flag, there was no means of instantly ascertaining the fact. From this ship, which he had thus twice spared, he received his death. A ball fired from her mizzen top, which in the then situation of the two vessels was not more than 15 yards from that part of the deck where he was standing, struck the epaulette on his left shoulder about a quarter after one, just in the heat of action. He fell upon his face on the spot which was covered with his poor secretary's blood. Hardy, who was a few steps from him, turning round, saw three men raising him up. "They have done for me at last, Hardy," said he. "I hope not," cried Hardy. "Yes," he replied, "my backbone is shot through it, even no, not for a moment losing his presence of mind," he observed as they were carrying him down the ladder. that the tiller ropes which had been shot away were not yet replaced and ordered that new ones should be roped immediately. Then, that he might not be seen by the crew, he took out his handkerchief and covered his face and his stars. Had he but concealed these badges of honor from the enemy, England perhaps would not have had cause to receive with sorrow the news of the Battle of Trafalgar. The cockpit was crowded with wounded and dying men, over whose bodies he was with some difficulty conveyed and laid upon a pallet in the midshipmen's berths. It was soon perceived upon examination that the wound was mortal. This, however, was concealed from all except Captain Hardy, the chaplain, and the medical attendants, he himself being certain, from the sensation in his back and the gush of blood he felt momently within his breast, that no human care could avail him, insisted that the surgeon should leave him and attend to those to whom he might be useful. Question number 1. What is meant by supposing that she had struck? Answer. Supposing that she had struck means thinking that the men in the ship had surrendered. Question number 2. How can Nelson be said to have been partly responsible for his own death? Answer. Nelson ordered his men 2 times to cease firing on the redoubtable. From the same ship a ball was fired at him and brought about his death. He was thus partly responsible for his death. Question number 3. What do you understand by the mizentop? Example. Answer. The mizentop is the platform round the lower part of the mast nearest the stern. Question number 4. Why did Nelson insist that the surgeon should leave him and attend to others? Nelson was certain that it would be impossible to save his life. He therefore insisted that the surgeon should leave him and attend to others. Question number 5. What qualities in Nelson's characters are revealed by this passage? Answer. His patriotism, his humanity, and his powers of endurance are revealed by this passage. Passage number 2. The voice had to be listened to not only on account of its form but for the matter which it delivered. It gave a message to the country that it needed greatly. It brought to be common people a realization of their duty to concern themselves with their affairs. The common people were made to take an interest in the manner in which they were governed, in the taxes they paid, in the return they got from those taxes. This interest in public affairs, politics as you may call it, was to be the concern no longer of the highly educated few, but of the many, the poor, the propertyless, the working man in town and country. Politics was not to be the concern of a small aristocracy of intellect or property of the masses. And with the change in the subjects of politics, that was brought about also a change in the objects of politics. Till then, politics had busied itself mainly with the machinery of government towards making its personnel more and more native, with proposals for a better distribution of political power with protects against the sins of omission and of commission of the administration. This was switched politics on to concern for the needs of the common people. The improvement of the lot of the poor was to be the main concern of politics and the politician. The improvement, especially of the lives of the people of the neglected villages, was to be placed before governments and political organizations. As the goal of all political endeavor, the rising of the standard of living of the people of the villages, the finding of subsidiary compensation which would give the agricultural poor work for their enforced leisure during the off season, and an addition to their exiguous income, the improvement of the housing of the poor, the sanitation of the villages. These were to be the objectives to be kept in view. In the towns, the slums and cherries were to receive especial attention. There was especially a class of the poor for which that compassionate voice pleaded and protested. This was for the so-called depressed class, the outcasts of Hindu society, the denial of elementary human rights to this class of people is considered the greatest blot on Hindu society and history. It raised itself in protest, passionate protest against the age-old wrongs of this class and forced those that listened to it to endeavor to remove the most outrageous of them like untouchability. It caused a revolution in Hindu religious practice by having Hindu temples thrown open to these people. It made the care of them a religious duty of the Hindus by renaming them Harijans. Mr. Rutnaswamy. Mr. Rutnaswamy. Question number 1. Why had people to listen to the voice of Mahatma Gandhi? Question number 2. Why had people to take an interest in politics? Question number 3. What was the change brought about in the objects of politics? Question number 4. What improvements were made for the common man? Question number 5. Explain a sense of omission and of commission of the administration be no longer the monopoly of the classes but the property of the masses. Students, you have to write answer for these questions. Passage number 3. The next ingredient is a very remarkable one, good temper. Love is not easily provoked. Nothing could be more strictly than to find this here. We are inclined to look upon bad temper as a very harmless weakness. We speak of it as a mere infirmity of nature, a family failing, a matter of temperament, not a thing to take into very serious account in estimating a man's character. And yet, here, right in the heart of this analysis of love, it finds a place. And the Bible again and again returns to condemn condemn it as one of the most destructive elements in human nature. The peculiarity of ill temper is that it is the vice of the virtuous. It is often the one blot on an otherwise noble character. You know men who are all but perfect, and women who would be entirely perfect, but for an easily ruffled, quick tempered, or touchy disposition. This compatibility of ill temper with high moral character is one of the strangest and saddest problems of ethics. The truth is, there are two great classes of sins: sins of the body and sins of the disposition. The prodigal son may be taken as a type of the first, the elder brother of the second. Now, society has no doubt whatever as to which of these is the worst. Its brand falls without a challenge upon the prodigal. Are we right? We have no balance to weigh one another's sins, and cougars and finer are but human words, but faults in the higher nature may be less venial than those in the lower. And to the eye of him who is love, a sin against love may seem 100 times more base. No form of vice, not worldliness, not agreed of gold, not darkness itself does more to uncharitinize society than evil temper. For embittering life, for breaking up communities, for destroying the most scared relationships, for devastating homes, for withering up men and women, for taking the bloom of childhood. In short, for sheer gratuitous misery producing power, this influence stands alone. Jealousy, anger, pride, uncharity, cruelty, self righteousness, touchiness, doggedness, souliness, in varying proportions, these are the ingredients of all ill temper. Judge if such sins of the disposition are not worse to live in, and for others to live with than sins of the body. There is really no place in heaven for disposition like this. A man with such a mood could only make heaven miserable for all the people in it. Questions. Question number 1. What is the popular notion about bad temper? Question number 2. How is bad temper the voice of the virtuous? Question number 3. Which class of sins is worse, and why sins of the body, sins of the disposition? Question number 4. Mention some evils of bad temper. Question number 5. Why, according to the author, will there be no place in heaven for bad tempered folk? Find words from the passage which men breaking up, running, scandalizing, sourcing, easily or quickly obtained. 4. Yes, there were gains before the Jam Sahib, The great Indian cricketer Kumar Sri Ranjit Singh, better known to the world of cricket as Ranji, and yet I think it is undeniable that as a batsman, the Indian will live as the supreme exponent of the Englishman's game. The claim does not rest simply on his achievements, although judged by them, the claim could be sustained. His season's average of 87 with a total of over 3000 runs is easily the high watermark of English cricket. Thrice he has totaled over 3000 runs and no one else has equaled that record, and is not his the astonishing achievement of scoring two double centuries in a single match on a single day, not against a feeble attack but against Yorkshire, always the most resolute and resourceful of bowling teams. But we do not judge a cricketer so much by the runs he gets as by the way he gets them. In literature as in finance, says Washington Irving, much paper and much poverty may coexist. And in cricket too, many runs and much dullness may be associated. If cricket is menaced with creeping paralysis, it is because it is losing the spirit of joyous adventure and becoming a mere instrument for compiling, compiling tables of averages. There are dull mechanic fellows who turn out runs with as little emotion as a machine turns out pins. There is no color, no enthusiasm, no character in their play. Cricket is not an adventure to them, it is a business. It was so with Shrewsbury. His technical perfection was astonishing, but the soul of the game was wanting him wanting in him. There was no sunshine in his play, no swift surprise or splendid unselfishness. And without these things, without gaiety, daring, and the spirit of sacrifice, cricket is a dead thing. No, the Jam Sahib has the root of the matter in him. His play is as sunny as his face. He is not a miser hoarding up runs, but millionaire spending them with a splendid yet judicious prodigality. It is as though his pockets are bursting with runs that he wants to shower with his blessings upon the expectant multitude. It is not difficult to believe that in his little kingdom, Navagnar, there he has power of life and death in his hands. He is extremely popular, for it is obvious that his pleasure is in giving pleasure. A. G. Gardiner. Questions. Question number 1. Correct the following statistics if necessary. Question number 1a. His season's average of 87 with a total of over 3000 runs is easily the high water mark of English cricket. B. Thrice he has totaled over 3000 runs and no one else has equaled total record. Question number 1c. He scored two double centuries in a single match on a single day. 2. Many runs and much dullness may be associated. Prove this. Question number 3. Mention some reasons why cricket is losing its luster. Question number 4. What gives cricket its character? Question number 5. How should real cricket be played? Question number 6. Describe in your own words the secret of the Jam Sahib's wizards with the bat. Question number 7. Make a list of do's and don'ts for a promising cricketer. Next passage. All great thinkers live and move on a high plane of thought. It is only there they can breathe freely. It is only in contact with spirits like themselves they can live harmoniously and attain that serenity which comes from ideal companionship. The studies of all great thinkers must range along the highest attitudes of human thought. I cannot remember the name of any illuminative genius who did not drink his inspiration from functions of ancient Greek and Hebrew writers, or such among the moderns as were pupils in ancient thought and in turn became masters in their own. I have always thought that the strongest argument in favor of Baconian theory was that no man, however indubitable his genius, could have written the plays and sonnets that have come down to us under Shakespeare's name, who had not the liberal education of Bacon. How this habit of intercourse with the gods makes one impatient of mere men. The magnificent ideals that have ever haunted the human mind and given us our highest proofs of a future immortality by person of impossibility of their fulfillment here are splintered into atoms by contact with life's realities. Hence comes over sublime discontent. You will notice that your first sensation after reading a great book is one of melancholy dissatisfaction. The ideas, sentiments, expressions are so far beyond those ordinary working life that you cannot run aside from one to the other without an acute sensation and consciousness of the contrast. And the principles are so lofty, so superhuman, that it is positive pain it once you become embedded with him to come down and mix in the squalid surroundings of ordinary humanity. It may be spiritual or intellectual pride that it is engaged on the high plane of intellectual life. But whatever it is, it becomes inevitable, a habitual meditation on the vast problems that underlie human life and are knit into human destinies. Thoughts of immortality, of the littleness of mere man, of the greatness of man's soul, of the splendors of the universe that are invisible to the ordinary traffickers in the street, as the vastness of St. Peter's is to the spider that waves her web in a corner of the dome. These things do not fit men to understand the average human being or tolerate with patience the sordid wretchedness of the unregretedness masses. It is easy to understand, therefore, why such thinkers fly to the solitude of their own thoughts, or the silent companionship of the immortals, and if they care to present their views in prose or verse to the world, that these views take a sombre and melancholy setting from the pale cast of thought in which they were engaged. Questions. Question number 1. On what plane must great thinkers live and move? Question number 2. Is a liberal education necessary to produce great literature? Question number 3. Why does the reading of a great book, according to the author, make one melancholy and disappointed? Question number 4. What are the things that make it hard to understand the average human being? Next pages. Next passage. The romantic life in Kashmir was drawing to its end after 3 glorious months. Miss John was leaving a week earlier than Mr. Rhodes, and about 2 days before she left, I took her alone to the hotel for dinner. We walked to the hotel in perfect silence, a silence so heavy that I could hardly breathe. The hotel seemed to be far away, and yet not far enough. That night, as I served her at a table, the temptation to touch her was overpowering, and I had almost forgotten myself when I dropped her coffee cup, which at a table made me pull myself together and realize my position and my caste. On the way home, there was a bridge over the canal to be crossed. She stopped on the bridge without a word, so I stopped beside her, looking onto the calm water of the canal shining between the gigantic cedar trees. In the distance, a gramophone was playing, and the music floated over the water. We stood for a long time without saying a word to each other. I think the parting was disturbing her. There was something which she could not along without saying have explained, and which she was trying to express. It might have been just a fancy of her own, or it may have been the subconscious knowledge of the secret, consuming passion of her attendant that was affecting her on this calm and beautiful night as we tarried on the bridge. It seemed to me that we stood there for ages, as if neither of us dare break the magic spell of night and music. Our houseboat was only a few yards from the bridge, and the good night was the only word that passed between us. As we parted, everything then went into the darkness. The mail lorry came up to the bridge to take her away from the romantic city of Srinagar and away from me. After she had taken her seat, I put a woolen rug over her knees to keep her warm on the journey, and she handed me a 10 rupee note as a parting gift and sweetly said goodbye. I watched her wave her hand till the lorry was out of sight. Then I realized what I had lost, and lost forever. Hazari. Questions. Question number 1. What was the matter with the attendant as he walked with Miss John to the hotel? Why did they not talk to each other? Question number 2. After reading the passage, can you give reasons to show what caste the attendant belonged to? Question number 3. The author mentions the Chenar trees of Kashmir. Give a brief but graphic description of these trees. Question number 4. I think the parting was disturbing her. Was it the romantic atmosphere of the surroundings, the thought of having to leave Kashmir, the kindness of her attendant, or thoughts of home that were the cause of the disturbance? Question number 5. Why does the author call Srinagar a romantic city? Give the meaning of romantic. Show how it may apply to Srinagar. Why did Miss John give the attendant a 10 rupee note? A 10 rupee note? Do friends do such things? Chapter 38. Precise writing. A precise is a summary and precise writing means summarizing. Precise writing is an exercise in comprehension. The precise is the gist or main theme of a passage expressed in as few words as possible. It should be lucid, succinct, and full, including all essential points, so that anyone on reading it may be able to grasp the main points and general effect of the passage summarized. Precise writing must not be confused with paraphrasing. A paraphrase should reproduce not only the substance of a passage but also all its details. It will be, therefore, at least as long as and probably longer than the original. But a precise must always be much shorter than the original, for it is meant for express only the main theme, shorn of all unimportant details, and that as tersely as possible. As the styles of writers differ, some being concise and some diffuse, no rigid rule can be laid down for the length of a precise, but so much may be said that a precise should not contain more than a third of the number of words in the original passage. Uses of precise writing. Precise writing is a very fine exercise in reading. Most people read carelessly and retain only a idea of what they have read. You can easily test the value of your reading. Read in your usual way a chapter or even a passage of a book or page of a book, and then, having closed the book, try to put down briefly the substance of what you have just read. You will probably find that your memory of it is hazy and muddled. In this because your memory is weak? No, it is because your attention was not fully centered on the passage while you were reading it. The memory cannot retain what was never given it to hold. You did not remember the passage properly because you did not properly grasp it as you read it. Now, precise writing forces you to pay attention to what you read, for no one can write a summary of any passage unless he has clearly grasped its meaning. So, summarizing is an excellent training in concentration of attention. It touches one to read with the mind as well as with the eye on the page. Precise writing is also a very good exercise in writing a composition. It teaches one who to express one's thought clearly, concisely, and effectively. It is a splendid corrective of the common tendency to vague and disorderly thinking and loose and diffuse writing. Have you noticed how an uneducated person tells a story? He repeats himself, brings in a lot of irrelevant matters, omits from its proper place what is essential, and drags it and later as an afterthought, and it takes 20 minutes to say what a trained thinker would express in 5. The whole effect is muddled and tedious. In a precise, you have to work within strict limits. You must express a certain meaning in a fixed number of words. So you learn to choose your words carefully to contract your sentences with an eye to fullness combined with brevity, and to put your matter in a strictly logical order. So, practice in a precise writing is of great value for practical life. In any position of life, the ability to grasp quickly and accurately what is read or heard, and to reproduce it clearly and concisely, is of the utmost value for lawyers, businessmen, and government officials. It is essential. Method of procedure. You must make up your mind from the beginning that precise writing means intensive brain work. There is no easy shortcut to summarizing a passage. To tear the heart out of a passage means concentrated thought, and you must be prepared for close attention and hard thinking. First, reading. First, read the passage through carefully but not too slowly to get a general idea of its meaning. If one reading is not sufficient to give you this clearly, read it over again and yet again. The more you read it, the more similar, familiar will it become to you, and the clearer will be its subject and what is said about that subject. Ask yourself, what is it I am reading? What does the author mean? What is his subject? What is he saying about it? Can I put in a few words the pith of what he says? Usually, you are required to supply a title for your precise. This is a good stage at which to do this. Think of some word, phrase, or short sentence that will sum up briefly the main subject of the passage. Sometimes this is supplied by what we may call a key sentence. This key sentence may be found in a passage at the beginning or at the end of passage. For example, look at exercise 148 number 20, in which the first sentence gives the subject, all the rest of the passage being an expansion and illustration of it. Hospitality is a virtue for which the natives of the East in general are highly and deservedly admired. This is at once suggests the short title of Eastern hospitality, but you will not always find such convenient key sentences in each passage. You have to summarize. In their absence, you must get a clear idea of the subject from the passage as a whole and then sum it up in a suitable heading. The effort to find a suitable title at this stage will help you to define in your mind what exactly the subject or main theme of the passage is. Further reading is now necessary to ensure that you understand the details of the passage as well as its main purport. Take it now sentence by sentence and word by word. If the meaning of any words are not clear, look them up in a dictionary. Detailed study of this kind is necessary because a phrase, a sentence, or even a single word may be of prime importance and misunderstanding of it may cause you to miss the whole point of the passage. You should know, be in a position to decide what parts of the passage are essential and what parts are comparatively unimportant and so can be omitted without any loss. This process of selection is not so easy as some people think. Beginners select, but they often select in a mechanical way. It requires some practice to be able to say this is essential to the meaning of the passage and that is only incidental and unimportant. The best guide, of course, is the subject or main theme of the passage. If you have a clear and correct idea of that, you will soon see what is important and what is unimportant. At this stage, it is useful to jot down your conclusions in brief notes, writing down the subjects, the title, and the details which you consider essential or important. This is a better plan than underlining sentences and phrases in the original. Writing rough drafts. You should know, be ready to attempt the writing of the precise, but be sure of the limits within which it must be compressed. If the number of words is given you, this is easy, but if you are told to reduce the passage to say a third of its length, count the number of words in the passage and divide by 3. You may use fewer words than the number of prescribed, but in no case may you exceed the limit. It is not likely that your first attempt will be a complete success. The draft will probably be too long. In fact, you may have to write out several drafts before you find how to express the gist of the passage fully within the limits set. A good deal of patience and revision will be required before you get it right. It is a good plan to write the first draft without having the actual words of the original passages before one's eyes. Important points. The following points must be kept in mind. The precise should be all in your words. It must not be patchwork made up of phrases and sentences quoted from the original. The precise must be a connected whole. It may be divided into sections or paragraphs according to changes in the subject's matter, but these must not appear as separate notes but must be joined together in such a way as to read continuously. The precise must be complete and self contained. That is, it must convey its message fully and clearly without requiring any reference to the original to complete its meaning. It is only the gist, main support, or general meaning of the passage which you have to express. There is no room in a precise for colloquial expressions, circumlocutions, periphrasis, or rhetorical flourishes. All of expression must be rigorously pruned. If faithful reproduction of the main theme is the first essential of a summary, consistence in the second. The precise must be in simple, direct, grammatical, and idiomatic English. The art of compression, you are not bound to follow the original order of thought to the passage to be summarized. If you can express its meaning more clearly and concisely by transposing any of its parts, in condensing, aim rather at remodeling than at mere omissions. We may omit mere repetitions, illustrations, and examples, but we change figures of speech into literal expressions, compress wordy sentences, and alter phrases to words. Take a few examples. His courage in battle might, without exaggeration, be called lion like. He was very brave in battle. The account the witness gave of the incident moved everyone that heard it to laughter. The witness' story was absurd. There came to his recollection, he remembered. The clerk of his now in his employ, his present clerk, they acted in a manner that rendered them liable to prosecution. They acted illegally. He got up and made a speech on the square of the moment. He spoke of land. John fell into the river, and before help could reach him, he sank. John was drowned in the river. He was hard up for money and was being pressed by his creditor. He was in financial difficulties. The England of our own days is so strong, and the Spain of our own days is so feeble, that is not possible without some reflection and care to comprehend the full extent of the peril which England had from the power and ambition of Spain in the 16th century. We cannot nowadays fully realize what menace Spain was to England in the 16th century. Indirect speech. As a rule, a precise should be in indirect speech. After a verb of saying in the past tense, for example, whether we look at the intrinsic value of our literature or at the particular situation of this country, we shall see the strongest reason to think that of all foreign tongues, the English tongue is that which would be the most useful to our native subjects. Condensed in direct speech, Lord Macaulay said that England's noble literature and the universality of her language made English the foreign language most useful for India. The change from direct to indirect speech calls for attention to the following points. First, current sequence of tenses after the verb of saying in the past tense. Second, clear differentiation of the various persons mentioned in the passage. Care must be taken with pronouns he, she, and they. To avoid confusion, proper names should be used occasionally. Third, correct use of adverbs and other words indicating time. Fourth, proper choice of verbs of saying to indicate questions, commands, warnings, threats, or exhortations. Great are must be taken to avoid lapsing into direct speech, a very common fault. Some passages, however, are best summarized in direct speech revision. When you have made your final draft, carefully revise it before you write out the fair copy. Be used that its length is within the limits prescribed. Compare it with the original to see that you mistakes in spelling and pronunciation, grammar and idiom. Then write out the fair copy neatly, prefixing the title you have chosen. Third, to sum up, first carefully read the passage if necessary several times. Apprehend clearly its main theme or general meaning. Examine the passage in detail to make sure of the meaning of each sentence, phrase, and word. Supply a short title which will express the subject. Select and note down the important points essential to the expression of the main theme. Note the length of number of words prescribed for the precise and write out a first draft. In doing this, remember that you are to express the gist of the passage in your own words and not in quotations from the passage that you should condense by remodeling them by mere omissions, and that your passage must be self-contained and a connected whole. Add nothing, correct, make no comment, correct no facts. Revise your draft, compare it carefully with the original to see that you have included all the important points. If it is too long, still further compress it by omitting unnecessary words and phrases or by remodeling sentences. Correct all mistakes in spelling, grammar, and idioms and see that it is properly punctuated. Let the language be simple and direct. Write out neatly the fair copy under the heading of the you have selected. Specimen 1. One great defect of our civilization is that it does not know what to do with its knowledge. Science, as we have seen, has given us powers fit for the gods, yet we use them like small children. For example, we do not know how to manage our machines. Machines were made to be man's servants, yet he has grown so dependent on them that they are in a fair way to become his masters. Already, most men spend most of their lives looking after and waiting upon machines, and the machines are very stern masters. They must be fed with coal and given petrol to drink and oil to wash with, and must be kept at the right temperature. And if they do not get their meals when they expect them, they grow sulky and refuse to work, or burst with rage and blow up and spread ruin and destruction all around them. So we have to wait upon them very attentively and do all that we can to keep them in a good temper. Already we find it difficult either to work or play without the machines, and a time may come when they will rule us altogether, just as we rule the animals. Summary: men and machines. We do not know what to do with our knowledge. Science has given us superhuman powers which we do not use properly. For example, we are unable to manage our machines. Machines should be fed promptly and waited upon attentively. Otherwise, they refuse to work or cause destructions. We already find it difficult to do without machines. In the course of time, they may rule over us altogether. Specimen 2. A stamp is to many people just a slip of paper that takes a letter from one town or country to another. They are unable to understand why we stamp collectors find so much pleasure in collecting them and how we find the time in which to indulge in our hobby. To them, it seems waste of time, a waste of effort, and a waste of money. But they do not realize that there are many who do you buy stamps, many who find the effort worthwhile, and many who, if they did not spend their time collecting stamps, would spend it less profitably. We all seek something to do in our leisure hours, and what better occupation is there to keep us out of mischief than that of collecting stamps? An album, a packet of inks, a new supply of stamps, and the time passes swiftly and pleasantly. Stamp collecting has no limits, and a collection never has an end. Countries are always printing and issuing new stamps to celebrate coronations, great events, anniversaries, and deaths. And the fascination of collecting is trying to obtain these stamps before one's rivals. Every sphere of stamp collecting has its fascination. Receiving letters from distant countries and discovering old stamps. ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಡ್ರಿ. A stamp is itself has a fascination all its own. Gazing at its little picture, we are transported to the wilds of Congo, the homes of the Arabs, and the endless tracks of the Sahara Desert. There is a history in every stamp. The ancient Roman Empire and the Constitution of America, India's independence, and the Allied victory are all conveyed to our mind's eye by means of stamps. We see famous men, pictures, writers, scientists, soldiers, politicians, and famous incidents. Stamps so small and minute, containing knowledge that is vast and important. Summary: stamp collecting. To many people, a stamp is merely something necessary for sending a letter. They regard stamp collecting as a waste of time, effort, and money. But there are many people who love buying stamps and find this hobby worthwhile and more profitable than other leisure pursuits. Collecting stamps helps to pass the time quickly and pleasantly. Stamp collecting is limitless and endless. Countries are always issuing stamps to celebrate important events. It is fascinating to receive letters from distant countries and to discover stamps in old books. A stamp itself has a charm. Stamps shows us geographical and historical pictures, famous people and incidents. These small things contain vast knowledge. Chapter 39, Expansion of Passages. This exercise is the exact opposite of precise writing. In precise writing, we have to compress, and in this exercise, we have to expand. A sentence or a short passage has to be large into paragraph by the fuller and more elaborate expression of its meaning, or by adding illustrations, details, or proofs to a simple statement. Such exercise practically amounts to the writing of miniature essays on the subject of the original sentence or passage. No strict rule can be laid down for the length of the expansion. It must not be too short, or it will scarcely be an expansion, or so long as to become an essay. On the average, 80 to 1000 words should be aimed at. Method of procedure. Carefully read the original sentence or passage until you feel that you clearly understand its meaning. It is good practice to write to express the main idea in a word or a phrase. Example: the real subject of the second specimen is pride in one's work. Having grasped the subject and meaning of the passage, proceed to expand it by adding details, illustrations, proofs, examples until it is a tiny essay, only long enough to make a paragraph. The expansion must contain all that was in the original passage, and more can be added, so long as it is strictly relevant to the subject. For instance, in specimen number 3, let the secret unseen acts, etc. The story of the Greek sculpture is not in the original, but it will illustrate the meaning of the passage. The sentence for expansion is conclusion of or finished product, and it is your work to trace the steps by which this thought has been arrived at. If it is a metaphor, explain its full meaning in plain language and give reasons to support it. Your expansion should read as a complete piece of composition expressed in good English, such that it can be clearly understood apart from the original passage. So, when you have written it, go over it carefully to see that nothing essential has been omitted or left obscure. Correct all mistakes in spelling, grammar, and pronunciation. Specimens. A great deal of talent is lost in the word for the want of little courage, self confidence, timidity, and self destruct are almost as great faults as conceit and overconfidence. There are many people who have really talent in different lines, and yet who never accomplish anything because they are afraid to make the first venture. And in this way, good and useful things are lost to the world. A reasonable amount of confidence in one's own powers is necessary for success. If I were a cobbler, it would be my pride, the best of all cobblers, to be. If I were a thinker, if I were a tinker, no wrinkle beside. Should mend an old kettle like me. Pride in one's work. It is a great thing to take a pride in our work. Anything that is worth doing at all is worth doing as well. Even in the humblest task, we should be ambitious to do it as well as we can, if possible, better than anyone else. For example, a cobbler should not think that because his job is humble one, it can be scamped and done anyhow. He should be determined to make better shoes than any other cobbler. And a tinker should take pride in mending even an old kettle better than any other tinker can. Let thy secret, unseen acts be such as if the man thou prizest most were witnesses around here. Toward goodness. A Greek sculptor, when he was asked why he carved the backs of his statues, which no man would ever see, as carefully as he carved the front, said, "The gods will see them." So it is not enough for us to live outwardly good lives, while in secret we allow evil in our hearts. For good knows, even if men do not, we should never do in secret that we should be ashamed of doing in the presence of our most valued friends. However mean your life is, meet it and drive and live it. Do not shun it, call it hard names. Making the best of life. Men who are always grumbling about their poverty, complaining of their difficulties, winning over their troubles, and thinking that their lot in this world is mean and poor, will never get any happiness out of life or achieve any success. However mean our life may be, if we face it bravely and honestly and try to make the best of it, we shall find that after all it is not so bad as we thought, and we may have our times of happiness and the joys of success. There is nothing common or unclean until we make it so by the wrong attitude we adopt towards it. Peace hath her victories no less renowned than war. The victories of peace. The word victory is generally associated in our minds with war and calls up visions of battles, bloodshed, and conflict by force, and we think of war as a glorious thing because of its famous victories and splendid triumphs. But when we think of the achievements of great men, statesmen, scholars, social reformers, scientists, philanthropists, explorers, discoverers, and honest workers for the betterment of the human race and the progress and civilization of the world, we realize that the victories of peace are even more glorious than the victories of war. Chapter 40. Essay Writing. The word essay is defined in the Concise Oxford Dictionary as
A literacy composition, usually prose and short, on any subject. Properly speaking, it is a written composition giving expression to one's own personal ideas or opinions on some topic. But the term usually covers also any written composition, whether it expresses personal opinions or gives information on any given subject or details of a narrative or descriptions. In fact, the word essay is somewhat loosely applied to a variety of compositions, from Bacon compressed essays on the one hand to those so called essays of Macaulay, some of which are lengthy articles almost as big as small books. On the other, addition essays are good models for Indian students because of their brevity and simple directness of style. So far as we are concerned here, an essay is an exercise in composition, and it is well to remember that the word essay means literally an attempt. Compare the verb to essay with the accent on the second syllable meaning to attempt or try. The essays you write at school are trial exercises or attempts to express your thoughts in good English. School essays of this kind are sometimes called themes, from the fact that such an essay is a composition written upon a given theme or subject. Characteristics of a good school essay. Unity. An essay must be a unity, developing one theme with definite purpose. The subject must be clearly defined in the mind and kept in the view throughout. Nothing that is not relevant to it should be admitted to the essay. At the same time, the subject may be treated in a variety of ways and from different points of view. Order. The essay should follow a certain ordered line of thought and come to a definite conclusion. It should not consist of haphazard reflections put down anyhow. There should be not only unity of subject but also unity of treatment. Hence, the necessity for thinking out a line of thought before beginning to write. Brevity. School essays should not be long. The limit should be about 300 words. Though, of course, there can be no strict rule as to length, which will depend a good deal on the nature of the subject. But an essay should be a brief exercise, concisely expressed. Style. In friendly letters, the style should be conversational essay, natural and familiar. And in writing such letters, we may use colloquial terms which would be out of place in a book. But the style of an essay must be before designated and literacy, slang, colloquial terms, and free and essay easy constructions are not proper in any essay. At the same time, it is a mistake to attempt any flights of fine writing. The language and the sentence construction should be simple, direct, and natural. The secret of clear writing is clear thinking. If you clearly understand all about your matter, you will never want thoughts, and thoughts instantly become words. This was said by Cobbett, a writer whose style is a model of clearness, simplicity, and directness. The personal touch. An essay should reveal the personal feelings and opinions of the writer. It should have his individuality in it, strictly speaking. As has been already said, an essay is a written composition giving expression to one's personal ideas or opinion on a subject, and this personal touch should not be lost, or the essay will be colorless and devoid of individuality. So, do not be afraid to express in your essay your own views, and do not be content with repeating the opinions of others. Let there be a note of sincerity in all that you write. To sum up, an essay must be a unity, treating in an orderly manner of one subject. It should be concisely written and not too long, and the style should be simple, direct, and clear, and it should have an individuality or show the personal touch of the writer. Three features are necessary in a good essay: suitable subject matter, proper arrangement, and adequate power of expression. Where all these three are present, the essay will be success. Classification of essays. Essays may be classified as narrative essays, descriptive essays, expository essays, reflective essays, and imaginative essays. The classification of is useful so long as it is remembered that these classes are not mutually exclusive and that some essays may partake of the peculiarities of more than one class. For example, the narrative essay may contain a good ideal of description, and essays of all classes should be more or less reflective. For the original idea of this form composition is an expression of the writer's own feelings and opinions about a given subject. For this reason, let us begin with reflective essays. A reflection is a thought on some subjects on an idea arising in the mind. So, a reflection essay consists of reflections or thoughts on some topic which is generally of an abstract nature. For example, habits, qualities, etc., such as truthfulness, thefts, temperance, cowardice, heroism, patriotism, industry, etc. Social, political, and domestic topics such as riches and poverty, caste, democracy, liberty, government, family life, education, marriage, business, etc. Philosophical subjects such as right and wrong, reality, consciousness, the meaning of the universe, etc. Religious and theological topics. In treating such themes, you should try to explain, for example, the important or advantages of possessing good habits and qualities, and the risks and disadvantages of lacking them, and quote stories, fables in or historical or literacy references in support of your statements. Discuss the importance of social institutions, etc. Expound and discuss philosophical and theological theories. You should reason and support your statements with arguments and facts. Narrative essays. A narrative essay consists mainly in the narration of some event or series of events. I say mainly because a narrative essay must not be confused with a short story or bits of history. The narrative it relates should be treated as a subject for thought and comment, and so the essay should be more or less reflective. Narrative essays may treat of historical stories or legends. Example: The Reign of Akbar, the story of Ram and Sita. Biographies: Life of Shivaji or Babur. Incidents: Example: Street quarrel, a festival, a marriage. An accident or natural disaster, a flood, a fire, ship, street quarrel, shipwreck, an earthquake, a journey or voyage, a story, real or imaginary. Descriptive essays. A descriptive essay consists of a description of some place or thing. Example: animals, plants, minerals such as the elephant, the people tree, coal, towns, countries, buildings, etc. Example: Mumbai, Italy, the Taj Mahal. Aspects and phenomena of nature such as volcanoes, the monsoon, sunlight, organic life, and manufactured articles such as motor cars, steam engines, silk, paper, etc. Expository essays. An expository or explanatory essays consist of an exposition or explanation of some subject. Example: institutions, industries, occupations. Examples: parliaments, the press, silk weaving, farming, etc. Next, scientific topics such as gravitations, evaluations, astronomy, etc. Next, literacy topics such as the nature of poetry, prose styles, the genius of Shakespeare, the novels of Scott, history of fiction, etc. Imaginative essays. Essays on subject such as the feelings and experiences of the sailor wrecked on a desert island may be called imaginative essays. In such, the writer is called to place himself in imagination in a position of which he has had no actual experience. Such subjects as If I Were a King or the autobiography of a horse would call for imaginative essays. Hints on essay writing. First, general preparation. One of the chief difficulties young people feel in essay writing is lack of matter. They do not easily find anything to say about a subject. This is natural because their experience and general reading are limited, but it may be reminded by reading and by training the power of observation. A. Reading. Bacon said reading maketh a full man. That is, a person who reads much and widely stores his mind with a large variety of facts, thoughts, illustrations, and general information. If you want to write good essays, You must acquire a love of reading, not simply reading stories for amusement, but reading good books of history, travel, biography, and science. Fill your mind with fine thoughts and accurate information. By so doing, you will become a full man, and a full man can always find plenty to say on most subjects. B. Observation. But all knowledge does not come from books. We may learn much from the life around us, what we see and hear and observe for ourselves. Keep eyes and ears open and learn from your own experience. Practice writing short descriptions of what you see in everyday life, the people you meet, bits of sensory that strike you, buildings, streets and trees and flowers, hills and valleys, the habits of animal and birds. Don't be content with reading other people's description of such things, but see them for yourself. It is surprising what a lot many be learned from personal observations. See, conversation. Books are written by men and women, and if we can learn from the books they write, we can learn also from the words they say. Listen to people's conversation, get them to talk to you about the things they know, and discuss the subject that interest you with your friends. In this way, also, you may learn much. A writer reads, observes, and gets people to talk, and in these ways, he is always enriching his mind with ideas and knowledge. Second, special preparation. Now we come to the special operation needed for writing an essay on some particular subject. And the first thing we must do is to define the subject. A. Defining the subject. It is very important that you should have a clear and accurate conception of the subject of the essay before you attempt to write on it. What exactly it is and equally important, what is not. Some subjects are so simple that you can scarcely make a mistake about them, but some want looking into to define them exactly. For example, the uses of computers. The subject is not how computers work, nor is it the history of computers. Yet some student carelessly reading the subject might easily take up a large part of their essay with such topics. In a short school essay, there is no room for irrelevant matter. You have to come to the point at once and start away with the subject. The subject in this case is the uses of computers in office, in industry, in aircraft, in spacecraft, etc. It is therefore very necessary that you should define the subject clearly in your own mind, or you may waste much time and paper in writing on more or less irrelevant matters. Collecting materials. First, reading up the subject. When you have got a clear idea of your subject, the next step will be to think of what you can say about it. Some subjects are so simple that a little reflection should supply you with sufficient material for a short essay, but for others, special information will be needed for which you may have to do some special reading. For instance, if you have to write about some historical subjects or give a description of some country you have seen, you will have to get hold of some book and read the subject up. But in any case, you have to collect materials from your essay before you can write it. In schools, class discussions on the subject under the guidance of the teacher are very helpful in this stage of special preparation. In any case, do not attempt to write the essay before you have given some time to thinking over what you can say on the subject. The common habit of beginning to write down the first thing that comes into one's head without knowing what is to comes next is fatal to good essay writing. Second, collection. As you think over the subjects, ideas, facts, and illustrations will pass through your mind, but if you don't catch them as they come, you may forget them just when you want them. So, as you catch birds and put them in a cage, catch and cage these fleeting thoughts by jotting them down on a piece of paper just as they come into your head without troubling yourself at this stage about their order or suitability. You can examine the birds thus caught at your leisure later to save time afterwards and for convenience of reference. Number these notes as you jot them down. Selection. When you think you have collected enough material for your essay or you can't think of any more points, read over the notes you have jotted down the select the points most suitable for your purpose. Examine at your leisure the birds in the cage to see what they are worth. You may find that some points are not very relevant to or won't fit in. Cross them out. You may find that some are mere repetitions of others, and others may be simply illustrations to be brought under main heads. This process of selection will probably suggest to you in a general way the line of thought you may follow in the essay. C. Logical arrangement. Now you should be ready to decide on the line of thought of the essay. The logical order in which you can arrange the points you have selected. The necessity of thus arranging your thoughts according to some ordinary plan cannot be too strongly insisted upon. Without it, the essay will probably be badly arranged, rambling, disproportionate, and full of repetitions and irrelevancies, making the outline bearing your subject definitely in your mind and with your purpose clearly before you. Sketch out a bare outline of the main heads under which you will Arrange your various materials in a natural, logical, and convincing order from a brief introduction to an effective conclusion. Filling in the outline. Having thus mapped out the main points with which you are going to deal, arrange the ideas you have collected each under its proper main head, rejecting all those not really relevant to your subjects or which simply repeat other thoughts, and taking care that each really belongs to the divisions in which you place it. You will now have a full outline. This is to be a guide to you in writing the essay, but this is not the essay, but only its well articulated skeleton. You must know clothe the skeleton with flesh and breathe it into the breath of life before you can call your production an essay.
Writing the essay. Paragraphs. Every essay should be divided into paragraphs, and each heading should have at least one paragraph to itself. An essay not thus paragraphed looks unattractive and is not easy to read. A paragraph is a group of related sentences that develop a single point. In constructing a paragraph, these principles should be kept in view. Unity. The paragraph must treat of one subject only. Variety. Paragraphs should not all be of the same length or of the same monotonous structure. Logical sequence of thought. Topical sentences. The most important sentences of a paragraph are the first and the last. In many paragraphs, the first sentence states the subject and is called the topical sentence or key sentence. The concluding sentence may sum up effectively what has been said in the paragraph. Second, structure of an essay. We may divide an essay into three parts: the introduction, the body of the essay, and the conclusion. A. The introduction. This, in a short essay, must be very brief. It would be absurd to have the porch bigger than the building itself. It may be simply a sentence or a very short paragraph, but it should always be arresting and pertinent to the subject. The introduction may consist of a definition or a questionation, proverb, very brief story, or a general remark leading up to the subject. B. The body of the essay. This is really the essay itself, the house to which the introduction is the front door and the conclusion the back door or exit. In arranging the body of the essay, observe proportion, that is, let each part have due weight given to it. If the subject is the good and bad influence of newspapers, do not devote three quarters of the essay to good influences and so leave only a quarter for the bad. Closely follow your full outline throughout. The paragraphs should be well constructed and should be related to one another according to the direction of your outline. And as far as possible, the connection between one and another should be shown. Avoid padding and keep to the point. Take pains in selecting words and phrases which exactly express the ideas which you have in mind, and frame your sentences so that they are quite clear and forceful. Avoid the use of unnecessary words. In revising your essay, look out for useless repetitions and redundant expressions and strike them out. Match the words to the sense and adapt the style to the subject matter. Do not write previously on a serious subject or on a light and humorous subject. C. The conclusion. As the introduction should arouse interest, the conclusion should satisfy it. An effective and satisfying end to an essay is as important as an arresting beginning. An abrupt or feeble ending may spoil the whole effect of the essay. A good conclusion may consist of a summing up of the arguments of the essay, final conclusion drawn from the subject matter, a suitable quotation, a sentence that strictly expresses the main point you want to drive home. Third, finally, a few words about your style in writing. To acquire a simple, direct, and forceful style in writing calls for constant practice. It does not come by nature. As the poet Pope says, true is an writing comes from art, not chance. As those who easiest who have learned to dance. The secret of clear writing is clear thinking. So be perfectly clear about what do you want to say and then say it as directly, as simply, as concisely as possible. Be direct. Use short sentences in preference to long and involved periods. Be simple. Don't attempt any oratory or flowery language, but use simple words and constructions and avoid elaborate and superfluous words. Say what you want to say as tersely as is consistent with making your meaning clear. Never use two words where one, the right one, will do. Be natural. Don't try to imitate any author's style, however eloquent, but be yourself. Yourself. Summary of method of procedure. To sum up, first, clearly define your subject in your own mind. Second, think over it until ideas about it come into your mind and got the points down on a paper as they occur to you, numbering them. Third, classify these points in groups under suitable headings, rejecting any that are unsuitable. Fourth, arrange these headings in a bare outline. Fifth, fill in the outline, making a full outline. Sixth, now begin to write the essay, dividing it into paragraphs. Seventh, the essay should consist of introduction, body, and conclusion. Make the introduction arresting. Keep the parts of the body of the essay in proper proportion, and take pains in choosing words, constructing sentences, and building up paragraphs. Make the conclusion effective and satisfying. Write in a simple, concise, clear, direct, and natural style. Example: holidays. There is not much need of proving to most schoolboys that holidays are necessary. They are quite convinced that they are and most desirable too. They welcome a holiday from school with hilarious joy and plug the headmaster on the least excuse to let them off their lessons. It would be more in place to try to convince them of the necessity of work and study. Yet it may be desirable to show that regular intervals of rest, recreation, or a change of occupation are really necessary. As the old rhyme says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Holidays at proper intervals are especially necessary for young people and for those engaged in hard mental work. For continuous work without a break will injure the health and may cause the nervous breakdown. A short holiday, rightly used, will send us back to our work with renewed zest and vigor. Rightly used, it all depends upon that, for holidays may be abused. If the holiday is spent in stupid idleness or in an exhausting round of existing amusements, or shut up in closed, stuffy rooms drinking and playing, or in any other unhealthy way, the boy or man will come back to his work tired, listless, and uninterested. The holiday, instead of doing good, has done harm, much more harm than steady work could ever do. How can a holiday then be best used so that at the end of it we shall come back to our work with inches, energies renewed, and interest keener than ever? If we are student or have been shut up in stuffy offices, we should get away into the pure air of the country and live a healthy open air life, enjoying games or sports. We should avoid unhealthy amusement, keep early hours, and get plenty of refreshing sleep. And we should not be completely idle. Change of occupation is a rest, and if we have a little regular work to do, work that we take an interest in, it will make our holiday not only healthier but more enjoyable. Next essay, the elephant. Now that the mammoth is the extinct, the elephant is the largest of all animals living and the strongest. It is a strange looking animal with its thick legs, huge sides and back, large hanging ears, small tail, little eyes, long white tusks, and above all its long nose, called the trunk. The trunk is the elephant's peculiar feature, and it puts it into various uses. It draws up water by its trunk and can squirt it all over its body like a shower bath, and with it, it picks leaves from the trees and puts them into its mouth. In fact, its trunk serves the elephant as a long arm and hand. Elephants look very clumsy and heavy, and yet they can move very quickly when they like. Elephants are found in India and in Africa. The African elephant differs in some points from the Indian, being larger with longer tusks and bigger ears. In fact, the two are considered to be different species. In both countries, they live in herds in the jungles and are naturally shy animals that keep away from men. Elephants, with their great size and strength, are fine advertisement for vegetarianism, for they live entirely on leaves of trees, grass, roots, and bulbs. The elephant is a very intelligent animal, and its intelligence combined with its great strength makes it, when tamed, a very useful servant to man, and it has been trained to serve in various ways. Elephants can carry heavy loads about 1,000 years each, and they are used to draw heavy wagons and big guns that would require many horses. They are very skillful too in peeling timber. The trained elephant will kneel down, lift a heavy log of wood, think its tusks, carry it to the place where it is wanted, and lay it exactly in position. Elephants are also trained for tiger hunting. The huntsman is sit in the hood on the back of the elephant, which is driven and guided by the driver called mount, who squats on its neck. In this way, the hunters are carried through the thickest and at such a height that they can see and fire at the tiger when it is driven out. In old days, elephants were used in battles, and all Indian Rajas had their regiments of trained fighting elements, and they still have their place in the state processions when they are painted with bright colors and covered with silk and velvet clothes. In Africa, elephants are hunted mainly for their tusks, which are made of ivory and are very valuable. Their skins are so thick that an ordinary bullet will not pierce them, and so large guns called elephant guns are used to kill the animals. Many elephants are caught alive to be tamed and trained, but catching elephants alive is difficult and dangerous work. For though the elephant is a shy wild animal when left alone, it can be a dangerous enemy when attacked. Elephants are generally caught alive in great traps or enclosures called cages. They are either driven into these cages or led into them by tame elephants called decoys, while are trained to lead their wild brothers into captivity. Chapter 41, Autobiographies. A biography is the history of the life of a person written by someone else. Example: Saude, Life of Nelson, Boswell's Life of Johnson, etc. An autobiography is the history of the life of a person written by himself. Example: John Stuart Mill's autobiography. In the following exercise, the pupil is asked to use his imagination by pretending to be another person, an animal, or an inanimate object, and to invent an autobiography of him or it. He must consider himself to be the animal or object, and in the first person write as that particular animal or object might be supposed to tell its own story. The story must be made as interesting as possible and told in simple language, such as in everyday talk. Specimens. First, the autobiography of a Euro. As soon as I entered the fascinating world, I was looked upon with great expectations. The world was full of racism, yet I was held in high esteem. People from the United States of America to Antarctica looked at me as I soon rolled out from the parentage of Europeans. Since economists, ragging bulls, and bears did not know much about me, I caught the apprehension of my parents, the share market holders, the financial experts, scholars, students, and so on. On my birth, I was placed on that lap of my mother, the Federal Bank. Frankly, my mother lay
Lyra, my sister Sterling, and my extended family members like the Dustage Mark and the N were quite jealous of me. I know my worth. I reveal this secret of mine. I am from of money held or traded outside the country in whose currency its value is stated. In future I would be globally acceptable by the members of all the nations. I know take pride of place in the euro market, a financial market which deals with European currencies. I do not want to roll over, but I love to be accepted by the developing as well as underdeveloped nations. The autobiography of horse. Now that I am getting old and stiff in the joints, I like to meditate while grazing in the pasture on full days. I think that was the happiest part of my life. I had no work to do and could run about after my mother, who was fine white Arab mare without any restraint. Most of my time was spent in the fields where I nibbled the tender grass and capered about, while my brother was steadily gazing. But that could not last forever. When I was old enough, the trainer came and to my great indignation fastened a long rope to my head and then began driving me round and round in circles with his long whip. I was frightened and angry, but he went on till I was so tired that I could scarcely stand. However, my mother told me that it was no use my resisting, and to make a long story short, I was at last thoroughly trained as a riding horse. I was bought by a young officer as a polo pony, and as soon as got to love the game. He was kind master and a good rider, and in the end I would do anything for him, and was quite proud when he side on the game. But he got into debt and had to sell me, and I was bought by a gentleman and a lady who kept a buggy and was trained to run in shafts. I hated this work, and I am afraid I gave a lot of trouble by going as slowly as I could. When my driver gave me the sweep, I started saying at the any object on the road, and then I found that jibbing was a very good trick, and whenever I was whipped, I simply backed. My owner got disgusted at last and sold me to a gentleman who was found on hunting. I was delighted to get back to saddle work and thoroughly enjoyed my gallops with the hounds after the jackal in one open country. But an accident put a stop to that jolly life. For one day, my master pressed me to a big jump, which I knew I could not do. I did my best, but fell short and fell. My master was thrown and broke his arm, and I badly sprained one of my legs. I was in hospital for weeks, and then was sold to a gentleman who wanted a quiet riding horse. He was a kind master and used me well, and I was in his service for a good number of years. Now I am old. He gives me very little work, and I spend most of my time grazing in the pasture and leading a quite contented life. Chapter 42. Dialogue Writing.
A dialogue literally means talk between two people. Dialogue writing is a useful form of composition, especially for the Indian student who is trying to gain a command of spoken English. Under proper guidance, it should introduce him to the colloquial way of talking English and train him to express his thoughts in easy and natural constructions. They spoke English of the Indian schoolboy is too often rather stilted and bookish, owing to the fact that he has not much chance of talking with English people, and anything that will help him to acquire naturalness and easy in speaking in English is of value. To write a dialogue successfully calls for a little dramatic power, for the writer has not only to see both sides of a question but has also to put himself, so to speak, inside to imaginary persons so as to make them express their opposite opinions naturally and in keeping with their characters. He has in turn to be each one and see the point of view of each one. The question, a written dialogue should be so composed that it appears to be spontaneous. The reader of it should not feel that it is premeditated, stilted, and dull. At the same time, careful preparation is necessary for writing a dialogue, though this must not appear. The writer must have the art of conceal his art. It is always advisable to make a plan or outline of the dialogue before beginning to write, otherwise, the dialogue may be rambling and pointless. Method of procedure, carefully think over the subject given and jot down briefly the argument or opinions about it, which might reasonably be expressed by the imaginary persons who are supposed to be talking. Arrange these ideas in some logical order so that one will arise naturally from another in the course of the conversion. It is the well to write down these points in the form of an outline or numbered heads as a guide to follow in writing the dialogue. Try to imagine what would be the way in which each character in the dialogue would express his views. To do this, you must have in your mind a clear idea of the imaginary persons taking part in the conversation so as to make them speak in character. For instead, in specimen number 2, swear up, the bookish student talks in a different way from Dulip Singh's, the athletic student. Keep in mind that your dialogue, when completed, should read like a real, spontaneous conversation. So try to make your imaginary characters talk in any easy, familiar, and natural manner. Avoid stilted and bookish phrases. Try to remember how real people talk in a friendly conversation and reproduce that conversational style as well as you can. Special hints. First, don't let any of your characters monopolize the conversation as if he were giving a public lecture. Give all a chance and keep the ball rolling. Let the conversation be brisk and rapid. In real conversation, one person sometimes interprets the other or breaks in on what he is saying. A sparing use of such interruptions
in written dialogue is quite permissible and adds to its naturalness. For example, I am perfectly certain he would never do such thing. Why only the other day he told me. Second, I don't care what he told you. I know for a fact that he did it. In a real conversation, a speaker often answers a question by answers a questions by asking another or sometimes seeing what is coming. He answers a question before it is asked. You may unveil your dialogue by taking your characters do the same now and then. Example, what will you do if he does not answer your letter? Well, what would you do? I heard something about you the other day, John. I know you are going to ask me why I was absent from office last Monday. Well, I will tell you, etc. In real conversation, people often use exclamations, surprise. Example, my word, good heavens, you don't say so, well, etc. Irritation. Example, brother, oh dear, confound it. Pleasure, how nice, splendid, and so on. Such interjections may be introduced from the time to time sparingly, but use of them should not be overdone. Note, slang, and profane words should be avoided. The dialogue should begin in an interesting way so that the reader's attention may be arrested from the very first, and the conversation should lead up to some definite conclusion. It should not end abruptly and in the air, so to speak. Special attention should be paid to the opening sentences and the conclusion. The fact that language should be as far as possible colloquial does not, of course, mean that it may be ungrammatical. However free and easy the style in which the persons in the dialogue are made to talk. They must talk good English. They must not, for example, be made to use such expressions as he asked my brother and I too tea, or can I give you an adverse? Keeping these points in view, write your dialogue in as natural, interesting, and realistic a manner as possible. The whole conversation should be brief and the questions and replies as concise and pointed as possible. Specimens. A conversation between two boys, one of whom is habitually despondent and thinks that luck is against him, whereas the other is of a more practical turn of mind. Nasrullah Jan, come Hasin, you are taking your failure too much to heart. I know it is a great disappointment, and I sympathize with you, but you must not allow it to make you so unhappy. Mahad Hasin, it is all very well for a lucky chap like you. Nasrullah, you have passed the first time, and this is my second failure. You would not feel so cheery if you were in my place. John, I know, but you must pull yourself together and make up your mind you will pass next time. Remember the old saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again and again. Hassan, I think the other version of the saying has more sense in it. If
At first you don't succeed. Quit at once. John, oh nonsense, you will never do anything if you don't reserve. No, why do you think you failed? Hassan, all this year fate has been against me. First I was ill with enteric, which lost me a whole term. Then just before my examination, my father died, and that so upset me that I could not prepare properly. John, well, you certainly did have bad luck. I am sorry, but I am sure you will succeed next time. So you must make up your mind to win through. Hassan, it's no use. I think I was born unlucky. I seem to fail in everything I touch. I tried several times to get a scholarship, but some other boy always got it instead. I shall give it up. John, indeed, you must not. Remember, it's the darkest hour before the dawn. Often, when things are at the worst, they begin to improve. I don't believe in all the talk about bad and good luck. A brave man makes his own luck. You have a year before you. You have brains, and if you will only pull yourself together and put your heart into your work, you will win through. Hassan, I wish I had your disposition. Still, I will take your advice and have another try. John, that's the style, and I am sure you will succeed and break your so called bad luck once for all. An imaginary conversation between a bookish student and an athletic student on the comparative merits of mental and physical culture. Dulip Singh, hello, swear up, sorting away as usual. Come out, man. Shut up your old books and come and have a game of tennis. Swear up. I am sorry, I cannot do that, Dulip. The examination is drawing near, and I want every hour I can get for study. Dulip Singh, oh, hang all examinations. I do not worry about mine. What is the use of them anyway? Swear up. Well, you can't get a degree if you don't pass the examination, and I have set my heart on being BA. Dilip Singh, and pray what God will BA do you? You may get clerkship in a government office, but that's all. And there are hundreds of fellows who have got their degrees and are not nearer getting jobs of any sort. Swear up. That may be so, but I am not studying so much to pass my examination and obtain my degree as to store my mind with knowledge and develop my intellectual faculties. Dilip Singh, my word, how fine you highbrows can talk, develop my intellectual faculties. I tell you, all a man wants to get on in the world is some brains, plain common sense, and plenty of push. And you can't learn these things from books. And while you are developing your intellectual faculties, you are spoiling your health. You will soon be a thin, white, narrow chested, half blind, waking if you stick to your beloved books like this. Look at my broad chest and feel my biceps. Anyway, I am developing my physical powers with my games and athletics. Swear up. Well, if I have to choose, I would rather have a learned and cultivated mind than a strong and well developed body. For the mind is far more important than the body. Dilip Singh. Oh, see, you mean to say that a man who plays football and hockey and is as strong as a horse cannot have any brains? Swear up. I did not say that, but you may remember what Kipling said about muddied oafs and planed fools. Dilip Singh. Well, I must say you are very complimentary. Kipling must have been an if he said that anyway. I would rather be a muddied oaf than a white-faced, spectacled bookworm as blind as their teacher. Hello, what are you two fellows about? Quarreling about? Teacher, I see. Well, you are both right and both wrong. Swear up. A little more physical exercise will do you good, and it will not interfere with your mental culture. And Dulip Singh, a little more study will not in any way spoil your physical strength. So go and have a game of tennis, swear up, and softer words, you Dulip, settle down to a few hours study. Next dialogue on the choice of profession, law or medicine. Jai, thank goodness our examinations are over at last. Das, what a relief. I hope I shall pass, for I have just got a letter from my father promising to send me to the medical college if I get through class 12. Jai, oh, are you going to be a doctor? Das, yes, and I am very glad my father is a doctor, and I have always wanted to be one too. It seems a very interesting profession. What are you going to do? Jai, my ambition is to be a lawyer, and when I have got my BA, I am to go to the law college to study for my LLB. That's law that never had any attractions for me. Why do you want to be a lawyer? Jai, well, it is a very respectable profession. One can be a gentleman and hold a good position anyway. Thus, so can a doctor. The medical profession is just as respectable as the legal. Jai, oh, yes, of course. But I think a lawyer can make more money than a doctor. Thus, I am not so sure of that. A few lawyers who get to be leaders of the bar, of course, do make fortunes. But what about the crowd of pleaders and even barristers who can scarcely make a living? The law is terribly overcrowded. Jai, oh well, there is always plenty of room at the top, you know. That's what I like about the medical profession, apart from its scientific interest, is that the work is so humanitarian. The doctor is always doing good to his fellows, relieving suffering, curing disease, restoring health, and so making folk happy. This makes doctor's life a sort of social service. Jai, well, a lawyer is doing good work too. He is helping to detect and prevent crime, defending the innocent from false charges, and helping people in distress. That's yes, but a lawyer's life is full of temptations. He is tempted to defend criminals for big fees and to get them off from just punishment. I don't see how a lawyer can help being a liar too. No, you are joking. It is as possible for a lawyer to be an honest man as it is for a doctor to be rough. Chapter 43. The Appreciation of Poetry. What is poetry? Though many have tried to define poetry, no one has succeeded in giving a satisfactory definition of it. No one has succeeded in giving a satisfactory definition of it. Poetry seems to elude all attempts to describe it. Yet we should know something about poetry and learn to cultivate our feeling for it so that we may gradually come to recognize it and know when it is present. The best we can do is to point out some essential characteristics of true poetry. Before we discuss these essential characteristics, let us try and understand the connection between poetry and verse. Verse is the form of poetry. Poets generally write their poetry in verse form, but there is a lot of verse written which is no poetry at all. Verse is the body and the poetry is the soul, and body without a soul is a dead body. We shall understand this better as we go on. Verse is usually printed in a particular way so that you can tell it from prose at a glance. But it is the ear, not the eye, which is the true test of verse. For when verse is read aloud, it sounds quite different from prose. Just listen to the different sounds of these two passages, one in prose and the other in verse. The untrodden snow lay all burdens on London when the sun was low and the flow of ice rolling rapidly was dark as winter. On Linden, when the sun was low, all bloodless lay the undertrodden snow, and dark as winter was the flow of ice rolling rapidly. The two passages are exactly the same in meaning. In fact, the very words are the same. Number contains the first four lines of Campbell poem called Hohenlinden. Contains the same lines with the same words differently arranged. Yet how differently they sound when read aloud. If we can hear this difference, we shall soon be able to tell the difference between prose and verse. The fight 2 points about the verse form of the passage that we notice are its first regular rhythm. As you read it, can you not hear the regular beat of sound, like the regular tramp of soldiers marching, or the regular beat of the feet of people dancing? There is nothing like this regular swing in a prose passage. It is caused by the fact that the poet arranges his words in such a way that the accented syllables on which we naturally lay stress in speaking come at equal intervals. If all the accented syllables in the first line are italicized, you will see that every second syllable must be pronounced more loudly or emphatically than the others. on Linden when the sun was low. The regular rising and falling in the flow of sounds in poetry. These recurring intervals of strong and light sounds, like the beat of a drum, regulating dance movements, is called rhythm. And rhythm is the chief and an essential characteristic of verse. As discussed from prose, this will be made clear later on. Rhyme. The next point we notice is that the words at the end of the first three lines all have the same sound: low, snow, flow. When words have the same vowel sound and end with the same constant sound, they are said to be rhyme. Example: keep, peep, jump, lump, hate, late, crow, few, glide, slide. Rhyme is not necessary to verse. You can have verse without rhyme, but generally verse is rhymed. Rhyme serves two purposes. It makes verse more musical by giving it pleasing sounds like the chimes of bell, and it serves to preserve the verse form in which the poem is arranged by marking the ends of the lines. Stanzas. If you look at the whole of the poem, The Daffodils, given on page 399, you will notice another characteristics of verse. You will see that one poem is divided up into units and that all the units are exactly alike in form. Each unit is of 6 lines. The first line rhyming with the third, the second with the fourth, and the fifth with the sixth. Such units or divisions in a poem are called stanzas. Most poems, though not all, are written in stanzas, all of which are of the same pattern. Verse then is characterized by regular rhythm, rhyme, and stanzas. Of these characteristics, rhythm is essential. You cannot have verse of poetry without rhythm. But while most poems have rhyme and stanza forms, these are not essential characteristics of poetry, for we have poems written in blank verse, verse in which each line has 10 syllables, but there are no rhymes at the end. Having discussed the connection between verse and poetry, we shall now consider some essential characteristics of true poetry. Music. The first characteristic of poetry is verbal music. The poet chooses instinctively words of beautiful sound and so arranges them that the words near each other. We will harmonize in sound so as to produce what may be called word music, and he varies this music to suit the subject so that the sound of the lines helps to make their meaning clearer. But verbal music depends not only on the musical sound of the words but also on rhythm. It is the combination of lovely rhythms with sweet sounding words that gives us the music of poetry. Here are two verses from Dryden's song for St. Cecilia's Day. The rapid rhythm of the first verse well expresses the excitement caused by the war alarm given by trumpet and drum. The slow and quiet rhythm of the second verse suits the soft and tender music of the flute and the lute. The trumpet's loud clangor excites us to arms with shrill notes of anger and mortal alarms. The double beat of the thundering drum cries hark, thou pose ho, come, charge, 'tis too late to retreat. The soft complaining flute in dying notes discovers the oaths of hopeless lovers whose dirge is whispered by the warbling lute. Now let us examine in detail how poets obtain some of the musical effects. Rhyme. Words are rhyming together give a musical kind of sound, and this is one reason why rhyme is so much used in poetry. Listen to the kind of the rhymes in this verse. Strive on her roses, and never a spray of a. In quiet she reposes, hey, would that I did too. Internal rhymes. Rhymes written within a line and not merely at the ends of the lines. Also add music and a slight apparent acceleration of the rhythm to a verse. Example: the ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around, the crackled and growled and roared and howled like noises in a sound. Vowel and consonant sound. Words with long open vowels and soft consonants like L, M, N, P, W, Z, etc. produce sweet, soft, smoothing music in these lines. Season of wisps and mellow fruitfulness. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats more. To dream and dream like under amber light. The murmurous hunt of flies on summer eves. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. This is the name given to the figure of speech by which the sound of words is made to suggest or echo the events. There are many onomatopoeia words in English. Example: roar, bang, crash, clamp, bump, bubble, scream, pop, moan, hum, murmur, etc. When they are talking of sounds, poets will use words to represent those sounds if they can more intense. The moan of doves in immemorial elms and murmuring of innumerable bees. Can you not hear the cooing of the doves and the humming of the bees? How is it done? Some of the words are onomatopoeic. Example: moan, murmuring. In others, the soft vowels and above all the M and N sounds give a humming murmur. Example: immemorial, innumerable. Alliterations.
Alliteration. This is the another figure of speech used in poetry. It brings together words which begin with the same consonant or vowel sound. For example, the fair breeze below, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. Here the F sounds give the impression of wind blowing. I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. Here the sound L represents the liquid sounds of little waves, and The S and SH sounds help. A rolling road that rambles round the shire. The R sounds helps the description of a wandering load. Repetition of words and phrases not only serves to empathize the meaning but often also to increase the musical effect of a poem. Reference. A refrain is a form of repetition. In some poems, the same line or a part of it is repeated at the end of each verse. Such a repeated line or phrase is called burden or refrain. Vision. The second characteristic of poetry is vision. A great poet is a seer, that is, sees here, one who has spiritual insight and can see truths that others do not. The ordinary unimaginative man is aware only of what he perceives by his senses and see only the outward aspect of what he sees. But the poets see much more. They have in moments of vision the power of understanding by a kind of in, in true poetry is the product of vision or imagination, for it is the expression of it. Wordsworth wrote a poem about a matter of fact, an imaginative man called Peter Bell. Peter Bell saw nothing but what he saw with his physical eyes. He had no vision. Now see what a primrose or any common wildflower is to a real poet. Wordsworth himself says, "To me, the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears." The poet idealizes the real. He helps us to see natural objects apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream. There is suggestiveness in great poetry. It suggests or implies much more than it says. It has a depth of meaning that cannot be fathomed by one or two readings. Emotion. The third essential of poetry is emotion. Ordinary prose writing appeals more to the head than to heart, but the function of poetry is to touch the heart, that is, to arouse emotion. Who can read such lines as this without emotion? And the stately ships go on to their heaven under the hill. But oh, for the touch of a vanished hand, and the sound of a voice that is still. But it is only emotion that can rouse emotion. If the poet feels nothing when he writes a poem, his readers will feel nothing when they hear it. Heart must speak to heart. To sum up, therefore, the essentials of poetry are music, vision, and the emotion. So we may say that poetry springs from imagination by emotion and is expressed in music and imagery. This is not a definition, for as we have seen, we cannot define poetry but description of its essential characteristics. Chapter 44. Paraphrasing. The word paraphrase, from the Greek meaning literally equivalent sentence, is defined as restatement of the sense of a passage in other words. It is the reproduction in one's own natural idiom or style of the full sense of a passage written in another style. Uses of paraphrasing. Someone has said with a sneer that paraphrase usually takes the form of converting good English into bad, but this need not be so, and if any case it is so, then the paraphrase in question is a bad paraphrase. It should be the aim of pupil to improve his English by the practice of paraphrasing, and of the teacher to see that the English in which his pupils' paraphrases are written is good English. Paraphrasing has two important uses. As an exercise in composition, it is first a good test of a pupil's ability to understand what he reads, and is therefore an excellent method of training the mind to concentrate on what one reads and so to read intelligently. For it is impossible to paraphrase any passage without a firm grasp of its meaning. It is secondly a fine training in the art of expressing what one wants to say simply, clearly, and directly. Incidentally, it gives a valuable practice in grammatical and idiomatic composition. A man who has once acquired the art of intelligent reading and of lucid expression has received no mean measure of education. A second use of paraphrase is that it forms a valuable method of explanation. Indeed, it is often the best way of explaining an involved or ornate passage of prose or of piece of poetry. So, narrators of poems often make use of it. Characteristics of a good paraphrase. Translation. Paraphrasing is really a species of translation, for though a paraphrase is not a translation from one tongue into another, it is a translation of one man's words into the other words of another in the same language, and as a translation must be accurate and explanatory to be of any value, so a paraphrase must faithfully reproduce and interrupt the thought of the original passage. Second, fullness. Paraphrasing differs from summarizing or precise writing, as a paraphrase must reproduce not only the substance or general meaning but also the details of passage. Nothing in the original may be left unrepresented in the paraphrase. It is therefore a full reproduction. Wholeness. In paraphrasing, the passage to be paraphrased must be treated as a whole. The practice of taking the original line by line or sentence by sentence and simply turning these into different words is not paraphrasing at all. Until the passage is grasped as a whole, no attempt should be made to paraphrase it. What we have to try to do is to get behind the words to the idea in the author's mind. But unless we can do it, we shall never reproduce the good paraphrase. Next, a complete piece of prose. Lastly, a good paraphrase is so well constructed at writing that it will read as an independent and complete composition in idiomatic English. It should in itself be perfectly clear and intelligible without any reference to the original passage. A paraphrase should be a piece of good prose that anyone would understand and read with pleasure, even if he had never seen the original upon which it is based. Special hints for paraphrasing: direct and indirect speech, metaphors, abstract used for concentrate, rhetorical questions, exclamations, apostrophes. Method of procedure: to write and paraphrase, because no one can paraphrase a passage which he does not understand. First, read the passage slowly and carefully until you feel you have firmly grasped its general meaning. If one reading does not make this clear, read it again and yet again and study it until you thoroughly understand it. This first step is all important. Next, read the passage again with a view to its details. Note all uncommon or difficult words and unusual grammatical constructions, metaphors, and figure of speech. Now, keeping clearly in mind the main purport of the passage, prepare to reproduce the passage in your own words, in simple and direct English, not leaving anything in the original unrepresented in your paraphrase. Treat the passage as a whole. Do not work word by word or line by line, but from the beginning keep the end in view. You may rearrange the order of sentences and even of the whole passage if this can make the meaning clear. Break up a long sentence into several short ones or combine several short sentences into one long. If by so doing you can make the whole more easily understood. Do not change words simply for the sake of change. No word can ever precisely take the place of another, and when a word in the original is perfectly simple in meaning and the best word in that place, it is a mistake to alter it. But all words and phrases that are at all technical or uncommon should be changed into suitable synonyms. Explanatory notes are altogether out of place in paraphrase, and their presence is a confession of failure in paraphrasing. All explanations of difficulties must be intrinsic parts of the paraphrase itself. If any sentences in the paraphrase requires a note to explain it, you must rewrite the sentence until it explains itself. A common fault in using indirect speech is the constant repetition of the same verb. Example: the poet says that, the poet further says, the poet again remarks that, and so on. The verb of saying, if used at all, should come once at the beginning and not again. Write out a rough draft of your paraphrase first. Revise this carefully, comparing it with the original to see that you have omitted nothing. Correct any mistakes in spelling, punctuation, grammar, or read it aloud to hear if it reads well as a piece of good English. If after taking pains you feel the paraphrase is as good as you can make it, finally write out the fair copy neatly and legibly.